Imagine a student sitting in the back of a classroom. He never takes notes. He never studies until the night before. He watches his classmates highlight entire textbooks in 4 different colors while he scrolls on his phone. And then the exam results come back, and he scores higher than almost all of them. Everyone calls him lazy. His teachers say he is wasting his potential. His parents say if he only tried, he could be extraordinary. And here is the strange part. He agrees with them. He knows exactly what he could become. He can picture it clearly, and he still does not move. So let me ask you a question before we go any further. Is that laziness, or is it something else entirely? Wearing the costume of laziness. Because when psychologists study people who are highly intelligent but chronically unproductive, they almost never find someone who lacks ambition. They find someone whose mind is working perfectly, and that is exactly the problem. Let me explain what I mean by that. The human brain consumes about 20% of your daily energy, while making up only about 2% of your body weight. It is the single most expensive organ you own, and because of that, evolution built it with one dominant instinct: conserve fuel. Do not spend effort unless the return is worth it. Psychologists have a name for this. They call us cognitive misers. We are all constantly looking for the shortest path from where we are to what we want. Now here is where intelligence becomes a trap. A person who learns quickly discovers something very early in life. They discover that the shortcut works. They learn in 1 hour what took another child 5. They cram the night before and still pass. They speak confidently in class without having read the chapter. And every single time it works, their brain files away a lesson. Effort is optional. Effort is for people who cannot do what I can do. So while other children are quietly building something invisible and far more valuable than talent, the ability to keep going when something feels hard, the bright child is building the opposite dot. They are building an allergy to struggle. And then adulthood arrives, because at some point, life stops handing out problems that can be solved in one sitting. Careers cannot be crammed. Fitness cannot be crammed. A business, a book, a marriage, a skill worth having. None of these respond to raw intelligence. They respond to boring, unglamorous repetition over years. And suddenly, the person who never had to struggle meets the one thing they were never trained for. Now think about what that feels like from the inside. For your entire life, being smart was your identity. It was the thing people praised. It was the thing that made you feel safe. And now, you are standing in front of something difficult, and you notice a very quiet, very uncomfortable thought at the back of your mind. What if I try as hard as I possibly can, and I am still not good enough? That question is unbearable, so the mind does something clever to protect you from ever having to answer it. It tells you not to try. Psychologists call this self-handicapping. If you never give your full effort, you never receive an honest verdict on your ability. You fail the exam, but you tell yourself you barely studied. You launch nothing, but you tell yourself you were busy. You stay average, but you keep the beautiful private fantasy that if you had truly committed, you would have been exceptional. The unfinished project is not evidence of failure. It is protection from it. As long as you never fully try, your potential stays undefeated. That is not laziness. That is fear, wearing very convincing makeup. But there is a second force working underneath this, and it is even harder to see. Ask yourself why boredom feels physically painful to some people and barely registers for others. A mind that processes information quickly needs more stimulation to feel engaged. Give that mind a repetitive task, a slow meeting, a long form that must be filled out, and it does not simply dislike it. It rebels. It generates a kind of internal static that feels almost intolerable. So the person avoids the task, not because it is difficult, but because it is dull. And then they judge themselves for it, because from the outside, avoiding something easy looks exactly like weakness. Meanwhile, that same mind will happily spend 6 hours researching an obscure topic that will never earn them a single rupee or dollar. So the energy is clearly there. It is not a fuel problem. It is a routing problem. The engine is enormous, and the steering is broken. And this brings us to the third piece, which I think is the most important one. Modern life has created something no previous generation had to survive. It has created the ability to feel the reward without doing the work. You can watch a video about building a business and feel the surge of possibility. You can plan a workout routine in beautiful detail and feel like an athlete. You can buy the course, download the app, organize the notes, and your brain releases the exact chemistry of progress without a single unit of actual progress occurring. Anticipation feels like achievement, and for a fast, curious mind, planning is far more entertaining than doing, because planning is where all the creativity lives, and none of the tedium does. So you end up with a person who has read 40 books on discipline and cannot wake up at 7 in the morning. Not because they are stupid, precisely because they are not. Now let me bring this back to where we started, to that student in the back of the classroom, because I want to say something that might be uncomfortable. We tend to treat intelligence as an asset, like money in a bank account. But intelligence is not an asset. It is a multiplier. And a multiplier applied to 0 returns 0. This is why the world is full of brilliant people working jobs they find meaningless, while people they once considered slower are quietly building lives that look, from the outside, almost unfair. The difference is almost never talent. The difference is that one of them made peace with being bad at something long enough to become good at it. So, if you have recognized yourself anywhere in this video, I do not want to leave you with a lecture about discipline, because you have heard that already, and it has not worked. Instead, I want to leave you with 3 honest questions. First, when you avoid something, ask yourself whether you are avoiding the difficulty or avoiding the verdict. Those are 2 completely different fears, and only one of them is real. Second, ask what would happen if you allowed yourself to be genuinely mediocre at something for 6 months. Not secretly excellent, not naturally gifted, just openly, visibly average, on purpose, while you learn. And third, ask yourself which you would rather protect, your potential or your life, because you cannot keep both. Potential is only valuable when you spend it, and the price of spending it is finding out exactly how much you had. Most people who are smart and lazy are not waiting for motivation. They are waiting for a guarantee that trying will be worth it. And that guarantee is the one thing life has never offered anyone. The moment you stop asking for it is the moment everything else becomes possible.